Okay, starting off your study guide back to 9.1 is finding the vertex. The vertex is that middle point in the middle of your parabola. So in this case, it is right here. So the vertex, what point is it at? The vertex is at x is 1, and then y is at -3. Remember, the axis of symmetry is the dotted line that goes through the middle of your parabola. And another way to think of it, it's always the x of your vertex. So we always start them off as x equals, because it's the equation of that line, and it's all the x's that equal 1. So again, this should match the x of your vertex. They should be the same. To think, is it a max or min? Think, is it the highest or the lowest point? It is the lowest point of that curve, so that means it is a minimum. That's from a graph, which is pretty easy, but from an equation, you need to remember the formula -b over 2a. So the tricky thing about this one is that you have, for number 2, a is -4. B is missing, actually, because remember, B is whatever's in front of x, and you don't have any x there. So B is 0, and then C is 2. So you're going to do -b, which would just be -0, divided by 2 times A is -4. I get -0 divided by -8. 0 divided by anything is 0. That's your axis of symmetry. That's the x part of your vertex. So I already know 0 there. To find y, you're just going to plug in 0 into x in that equation. So y equals -4 times 0 squared plus 2. You can put that all on your calculator once, or you can do mental math. This one's pretty easy. That all comes out to be 0 plus 2, and you get 2. To think, is it a max or min? You have to remember that if A is negative, it looks like a frown face. So you have to think, okay, it's a negative A value, so it would look like that, and that's going to be a maximum because it's the highest point on the graph. For number 3, similar, A is 1, B is 0, and C is 7. So I'm going to do -b over 2a. I get 0 over 2, which is just 0. So again, my axis of symmetry in this case is 0, but then you have to plug it in. So I'm going to plug it into my original equation for x. So y equals 0 squared plus 7. 0 squared is 0, plus 7 is 7. So my vertex, again, remember that relationship, x is 0, and your y is 7. How do I know if it's a max or min? Well, it's a happy face because A is positive. So it's a happy face, which means it's the lowest point in a curve, so it is a minimum. So it is the minimum there. This word problem often gets a lot of people. A kangaroo jumps into the air with an upward velocity of 25 inches per hour. Its height in inches after t seconds is given by this function. So they already came up with the equation for you. So I'm just going to highlight that. So that's your equation you're working with. What is the kangaroo's height, and how long does it get to its maximum height? That is really just asking you to find the vertex. We know the maximum. If you imagine the kangaroo jumping, we're really just finding that point there. In this case, if you think about it, x is like t in our equation. So that means that our time is our x. And then our h is y. So y is h in this case. So your height is y. So I'm going to find -b over 2a. So -b, so again, a is -5, b is 25, and C is 1. So I'm going to do -b, so -25, divided by 2 times -5. Remember, don't put all that in your calculator at once. You'll probably get the wrong answer. Do the bottom first. 2 times -5 is -10. And then just divide those, and I get 2.5. So remember, as my vertex, I have 2.5 as the x. Then I'm going to find the y by plugging in 2.5 in for x, our case, which is t. So our h is negative 5 times 2.5 squared plus 25 times 2.5 plus 1. So again, I'm just putting it into that top equation in for x for all of them. When you plug that in and you calculate it, you should get 32.25. Again, you can type all that in your calculator as long as you're using parentheses. So then which one is the height and which one is the time? Notice, again, x is the time in our case, because if you look here in the normal x spot, it's t. So our time to get there must be this one. So 2.5. The height is that highest y value it reached, which was 32.25. Big thing you need to know really for those problems is that if they're asking for the max or min, they're really asking you to find the vertex. Okay, don't get overwhelmed by the word problem. It's probably asking you to find the vertex.